Good evening. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Marin Waters Board of Directors for Tuesday, December 9th, 2025. Terry, can I please have a roll call?
Good evening, Director Larry Russell,
Here.
Vice President Jed Smith,
Here.
Director Ranjiv Kush,
Here.
Director Diana Mayer,
Here.
President Matt Sampson.
Here. Do we have any public comment on the agenda?
Not on the agenda.
I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
First and a second. Terry, roll call.
Director Russell.
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Aye.
Thank you. Vice President Smith,
Aye.
Director Kush,
Aye.
Director Mayer,
Aye.
President Sampson.
Yes. Moving on to item number 5, public comments on non-agenda matters.
We have two speakers, Mr. Phil Sauter and Martha Davis.
Good evening. I had to leave before the afternoon presentations at last week's board retreat, but I did get a chance to watch the recording. And as Martha commented, I really was ecstatic after seeing Carrie's water efficiency presentation. A couple of years ago, I asked for an update of our old heat map, and last year requested an overlay of top water users with our 8-year-old lawn map. And I've been hoping to see customer segmentation according to water use and seasonality, which would help target our water efficiency programs and help optimize programs to help reduce water waste. And last Monday at the retreat, Carrie came through with all of that, as well as a quick summary of the July 22nd Planning Committee presentation on high water users. I'm very thankful for the work and thought that went into digging out that data and providing conclusions and next steps for the board to consider. 2 weeks ago, I joined a webinar on water efficiency put on by the Pacific Institute and featuring a presentation by the water efficiency manager for the San Antonio Water District. When asked what I found most helpful, I said it was a quote by one of the participants that you can't manage what you don't measure. It's a great segue into the data analysis that Carrie is doing for water efficiency and Brett is doing for financial analysis and rate setting. One example of how useful these analyses will be is a switch from Ben's comment last year that recycled water would require a $2 to $3 billion investment. I assume based on needing 900 plus miles of new pipeline, to Carrie's current look at overlaying smaller purple pipe networks around high user pockets. This moves us from what we can't do to something we can do. A couple comments during and after Carrie's presentation really struck me. 2 years ago, the message I was hearing was that we don't know how to reach the super users. On Monday, Carrie commented that these super users really want their water and will pay dearly to get it. For me, it helped shift my earlier goal of helping them conserve potable water to an additional goal of providing them access to unlimited recycled water and use that stable source of revenue to further expand our recycled water system. Another thing that struck home was Director Sampson's comment that some of these replacement landscapes may be out of reach for a segment of our customer base. And it gives me hope that we'll also look at some of our large capital projects through that lens of awareness, that some customers will benefit and some customers won't. Again, many thanks to Carrie and her team for that excellent presentation.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, please.
Good evening, Martha Davis with the Nicasio Landowners Association. And as you know, one of our community's urgent concerns have been figuring out how to prepare for this winter and deal with potential flooding. And we just got the good news yesterday from Paul Selye that Marin Water has gotten the permit from the regional board in order to do the work in the creek bed to remove the woody debris. So I want to say thank you to all of you, but particularly to Paul and Lucy Croy for their great work. It's been a partnership because, of course, we were able to put together some work with a hydrologist to start figuring out where the priority areas would be for cleaning up. And then their hydrologist came out and we've walked the creek and now we have the permit. So we're very excited about that. I think just to alert you to it, we still have concerns about the school property and the flooding there. And I know that's another area that we'll be working on with you, but I just wanted to make sure I did have the opportunity to walk the school bank with your consultants, ESA, and they did express a lot of concern about what they were seeing, particularly when they were looking at some of the videos that Barbara the school principal has, showing historic locations of where the bank was and how it's evolved over time. So I know this is going to be another point of discussion between us. But in the meantime, let's celebrate the fact that I think, fingers crossed, you'll be out in the creek with next week. I think we've already got all the permissions for you. Paul, you'll let me know for sure if we don't. But everybody is very excited about this work and really appreciate the effort that you've put into making this happen over the last month. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Great, thank you. Moving on to Director and General Manager's announcements. We'll start with our General Manager this evening.
Yeah, my announcement, you just heard, I wanted to share that the emergency permit that we filed was on December 8th approved. It was an interesting process where staff walked through kind of each work area with the regional board, and some they supported and some they didn't. So they were fairly engaged, and will be starting as soon as this week, the end of this week. And we expect about 2 to 3 weeks it'll take of the work.
Great, thank you. Moving on to Director's comments. We'll start, Director Russell.
None.
Great, thank you. Director Kush.
Yeah, thank you. Going to be kind of long. Sorry, guys. Because last week I was able to attend the Association of California Water Agencies Fall Conference. That's also known as ACWA. It was in San Diego, and Ben, Molly, Jared, and Adrian were also there. ACWA, as it should, keeps a close eye and engages with policies, legislation, and legal decisions at the state and national levels that are relevant for water suppliers in California. And Molly, maybe you can follow up with anything in those areas that stood out for you, any new developments, particularly on the legal front. But there's a few items I'll touch on before that. Because there is a lot of other material presented and discussed at the conference. And I actually chaired a panel on cybersecurity risks that might result from increasing integration of AI into operational and business activities, something that is a pretty timely topic, I think. And it also feels a little ironic today because my personal email account was hacked this week. And many of you probably received phishing emails from me. I'm really sorry, and I hope you deleted them quickly. A few other highlights from the conference. AI. So this was the first time at a water conference that I actually ran into vendors who are customizing large language models now to assist water agencies with their business activities, reporting, financial analysis, a lot of the day-to-day activities that happen on the business side versus the operational side. And we actually spoke about this a little at the board retreat. Another area was energy production. Ben and I met with a group in the Bay Area called White Pines Energy that finances, builds, and operates solar energy and battery installation projects with water and wastewater agencies through power purchase agreements. And Ben, I think that would be one that would be worth following up on, given how close they are and how much they've done in this region. Water resiliency is probably always the main topic of the conversation, and there are a few big things that were on the agenda. The Bay Delta Conveyance Project, the big tunnel to move water from the Sacramento River to the State Water Project, and Central Valley Water Project is still being discussed a lot, but honestly, to me, it feels a little bit like high-speed rail. It's sort of in the rate of progress, maybe even moving slower. So I think it's going to be an ongoing discussion for quite a while. There were presentations on 2 new major reservoir development projects. One is the Sites Reservoir in Northern California that we've been hearing about now for quite some time. I believe they're still in the permitting process. I think that's largely focused on their water rights. Another one, which is smaller, about 80,000 acre feet in the coastal range east of San Jose. It's called the Del Del Puerto Canyon Reservoir and being developed by the Del Puerto Water District in that area, primarily for irrigation supply, is actually much further along. All the permitting is completed, and now they're working on the financing. So that's going to be about a $1.1 billion reservoir development project. With respect to desal, the most current, I believe, desal project is a smaller 5 MGD plant that's been planned in Southern California near Dana Point on Doheny State Beach. And all the planning and permitting for that has been completed. And the district, Southern Coast Water District, that is managing it, will make a decision in April regarding whether they'll go forward with construction or not. And I think what it sounds like they're still trying to understand the actual water costs that would result from that plant, and they may not in the end prove cost effective for them. So that will be an interesting decision to monitor in the coming April. One of the hot topics was deep sea desalination. This is actually, the concept is to utilize the high pressure at great depths below 400 meters to drive water through the reverse osmosis membranes and save on the energy requirements. A startup called Ocean Well gave a presentation that was had a lot of interest, and there seemed to have a lot of interesting collaborations coming together with coastal water suppliers in Southern California, but still, I would think in the proof of concept phase for the actual technology. And then finally, on the water resiliency side, direct potable reuse, always also a big topic. And I think, as we all know, there are 3 pilot plants that are approved. One in City of Los Angeles, City of San Diego, and Valley Water, which supplies parts of San Jose. All 3 of these DPR pilots are in the demonstration and data collection stages. None of them are providing actual supplies yet. It's all sort of understanding the actual quality and feasibility of those projects. So I'll stop there. Great conference. Molly, if there's anything you want to add from the legal side.
I think I would just share with the board and public that Aqua State Legislative Committee did approve a proposal to look at moving forward in sponsoring legislation regarding wildfire liability. I don't know if you are all aware, but there have been many, probably hundreds of cases filed in Southern California following the fires down there, primarily focused in inverse condemnation actions against some of the water agencies down there. So it was heightened awareness on that. There's been some recent legislation, specifically in Ventura, kind of prescribing some actions that they want to see in that jurisdiction specifically, at this point, solely in that jurisdiction, that water districts take. But I'm on a wildfire legislation committee, a working group with state leg and the legal affairs subgroups to look at development of that legislation, see how we can help the public and the legislators understand that our systems are not designed or constructed to be able to defend against these catastrophic wildfires. So more to come on that, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we can understate how important this particular issue is for water suppliers, including us. Right. So really important to try to push for a favorable outcome for water suppliers.
Thank you. Director Mayor.
I don't have anything. Thanks.
Vice President.
Just committee report. So good.
Great. And same with that. So we'll move on to item number 7, board committee reports. Director Russell.
Yes, I attended the NBWA meeting. It happened to be in our boardroom last Friday, and it was quite interesting. Professor Jay Lund from UC Davis made a presentation on the impacts of climate change on the Bay Area going back 13,000 years. And at that point in time, the Fairlawns were connected to the mainland, which I was not aware of that had happened due to the level of water drop due to the formation of large ice fields in the polar areas. So then he walked it through up till present and talked about what's going to happen. It was quite an interesting talk, and he had a great deal of insight on what impacts California will suffer from the increase of water levels. One time doing separate research, I was looking at San Clemente Island, which is off the coast of Santa Barbara, and it showed a cross section shot down the beach, and there was a beach maybe 50 feet higher than the beach that the picture was taken from, which was the historical beach from when the water levels were much higher. So it's a real thing, and it is can imagine what would happen with 50-foot higher water levels in the Bay Area. They also talked a great deal about Corte Madeira's dike system, which until I heard that, I wasn't even aware that Corte Madera had dikes directly. I know we saw a presentation where San Rafael had dikes, but the Corte Madera dikes, the question was, should they upgrade them to current core standards, or should they just make them higher? And Professor Lund suggested that we do it right the first time and put the money in to make them meet standards.
Great, thank you. Any other committee meetings?
Yeah, on November 20th, we had our Finance Administration Committee meeting. We reviewed our revenues and expenditures to date, and there was a brief discussion of our quarterly investment earnings, which are doing pretty well given our new investment policy and interest rates. They brought a proposal to have the SAP software maintenance renewed and support agreement. So that's happening. And thank you for the thoughtful presentation. The public may access this on our website. Thank you.
Great. Any other committee meetings? No. Larry, thanks for doing the North Bay Watershed Association meeting. Just for information, their biannual conference will be in April, and encourage everyone to be able to attend. It should be a pretty good lineup as we move forward with that. So moving on, we'll go ahead and go item number 8, our consent calendar. Can I have a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
First and secretary, roll call, please.
Director Russell,
I'm sorry.
Aye.
Sorry, Larry, 1 second. I did forget public comment on consent items. Thank you.
there are none.
Great. Sorry about that, Larry.
No problem.
We're good.
Aye.
Vice President Smith,
Aye.
Director Kush,
Aye.
Director Mayer,
Aye.
and President Sampson.
Yes, moving on to item number 9A, the District Cross Connection Control Program and proposed ordinance.
Good evening, Paul Sellier, Water Resources Director. A fairly routine business item tonight. The presentation, I'm joined by Matthew Steiner, our Water Quality Manager. This subject was brought to the board July 1st, where we did sort of a more in-depth presentation on cross connection. And tonight, Matthew has a short presentation to walk us through just a reminder, recap a little bit of July and a summary of the changes. And with that awkward pause, I'll turn it over to Matthew.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to talk about the cross connection code update. So kind of jumping right in. Back in July, staff presented to the board on our cross connection control program. We're going to kind of do a brief recap on the cross connection control program, the presentation that happened. We're going to jump into the cross-connection plan update and then kind of end with what we'll be talking about tonight, which is the proposed changes to the district code. And obviously, we'll end with some next steps. So jumping right in. What is a cross-connection? Cross-connections are, a cross-connection is a pathway for potential contamination. It's the pipe, it's the hose, it's the pump between a safe water and a potentially unsafe water. And you can see a few examples on the right side of this slide of what is often considered, a hazard, excuse me. Kind of delving a little bit deeper into one of these examples, a fire sprinkler system. What makes a fire sprinkler system unsafe? Well, it's a separate piping system inside of a building. It's sometimes or oftentimes comprised of pipes that's not safe for human consumption. Sometimes there's chemicals that are added to the suppression system. Oftentimes there's a pump. There's a general potential for it to be an unsafe water source. Cross connections, backflow and back siphon are terms associated with cross connections to describe the reversal of flow from normal direction. Backflow being when downstream pressure is higher, and a backflow being when water can infiltrate or seep into the pipe. Hopefully some of that's review. Backflows can be mitigated in a couple of ways. The first one, the top image there is an air gap, a physical separation between the pipe and the tank itself. The way the air gap works is there's no way that in this image that tank could overflow back into that pipe. It is a physical disconnection. Another example, a mitigation example, is a backflow prevention assembly, or a BPA, which is shown kind of in the lower section there. But just to kind of run through what that image is, you see potable water supply on the big pipe, and then an example of what would be like a service lateral leading to somebody's meter, or in this instance, a building with an enormous property with lots of hazards downstream, if you will. And this back pressure device would sever any backwards flow. I think what we're looking at here is a double check reduced pressure principal valve. So those two kind of 45-degree angle check valves would prevent the backwards flow of water into a building, eliminating or mitigating the hazard. A water distribution system is a closed loop. It's an isolated system, and it relies on its integrity. And a cross-connection control program is a key component of the system's integrity. A water distribution system could be thought of as having three basic components, which include physical integrity, the pipe network itself, which integrity, to maintain that integrity, we've got pipe repair and replacement, leak detection, design requirements, including, separation distance from waste streams, for example, when putting in a pipe. The hydraulic integrity, which kind of put bluntly is just maintaining a positive pressure within the system. And lastly, water quality integrity. That one's a little bit tricky. Maintaining a disinfectant residual, which is a whole nother subject that we will be coming back to you to talk about at some point, I'm sure. And a cross-connection control program. So kind of jumping into the cross-connection control plan. You learned in the July presentation that there were changes in the regulatory requirement of a cross-connection control program. The actual requirements of the requirements were expanded under this new state law that was passed. The district's program was largely, it was robust enough that it met many of the new requirements, the expanded requirements. District staff put together a draft plan and submitted it to the Division of Drinking Water in July, shortly after your presentation, the presentation, I believe, and it was approved in that same month. The biggest change to the required for the district's program is the approach to the hazard assessments. And the hazard assessments is under the hazard assessment requirement, every service connection has to be assessed. Every service connection within the district has to be assessed Now, the program requirements allowed for a long timeline. They give us, well, potentially 10 years. We put that in our plan, a 10-year horizon, and it was approved. To kind of break that down a little bit more, we developed a phased approach with the first phase honing in on commercial connections, existing commercial connections specifically. Commercial connections were prioritized because they pose the biggest risk for a cross connection. They're the buildings that have, manufacturing facilities. Though we might not have many of those, there are still some. They are the dry cleaners, the car washes, anything that might have a higher hazard. So starting with the known connections, and then that's the phase that we're currently in. The second phase will be commercial connections that have no known backflow preventers, moving on to residential customers with AMI, and following the fourth phase with residential customers without AMI.
That's just a quick question. The difference between, or the reason behind AMI and no AMI for the 5 years?
By 2030, when phase 3, is planned to start, we don't know how much of our district will have AMI, and so it could be a good kind of separating point to divide and conquer, if you will, kind of separating it between into more equal phases. AMI also has some advantages for backflow. For example, some of the backflows that we have currently installed can recognize backflow events. It can mark them. It can alert. It can send alerts that a backflow event has happened. And
Yeah, I think I would just jump in and say, President Sampson, it's just reflective of the fact that the board hasn't made the decision yet to deploy AMI, but we do have some AMI out in our system, so we're just reflecting that potential difference. But you're right. If everything goes well, vast majority of our residential customers will have AMI by that time.
Gotcha. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So the proposed changes to the district code are existing section 11.14 for cross connection. It references the California Code of Regulations Title 17. Title 17 was recently repealed, or the portions relating to backflow were repealed. So the inherent references that we have in our code need to be replaced. So the proposed district code will remove those references and adopt new references. And the existing code, when it was written, rather than referencing the Title 17, it actually borrowed a lot of the language, which is not uncommon for some of our district codes. So rather than replacing it, the suggestion is to adopt it by reference, both the cross-connection control policy handbook, which is the state's plan, or rather policy, and also Marin Water's approved cross-connection control plan. And it's really, rather than updating our code with every change to district code, or I'm sorry, to require regulations that come along, adopting a living document, it seems to make a lot of sense. It alleviates repetitive code changes. So last slide, next steps. Staff will continue routine cross-connection and backflow activities, such as site inspections, backflow verification reminders, and database upkeep. We will continue implementing our approved cross-connection control plan, and the proposed ordinance will be brought to a future board meeting for approval.
So this item tonight is just a review and comment.
Great. And thank the clarification. Thank you, Matthew and Paul, for the presentation. I'll start with board member comments if we have any. I'll start with Director Mayer.
No comments. Thank you for the update.
Dr. Kush.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, Paul, for the update. I think the proposed code changes all sound good to me. No questions there. Just on the hazard assessment, and I'm guessing we probably spent some time on this in July as well. But just a reminder, some of the customers that are managing their own that are monitoring their backflow, devices, prevention devices, and paying for that, have said, well, my neighbors had a pool, but they put it in 50 years ago. They don't have any system for managing backflow? Why am I being penalized just because I did some upgrades more recently? So with our hazard assessment timeline, are we going to be fairly systematic about going through and trying to identify older residences where a lot of work might have been done with swimming pools, irrigation systems, and possibly sprinkler fire systems that that were not actually inspected, or that don't have these backflow preventers?
Yeah, there'll be, what we've tried to do is come up with a risk-based approach to hazard assessments and implementing this state requirement over the 10 years. And so starting with the commercial sector. But in terms of residential backflows, there'll be a number of different approaches, I think, that we have in the plan to conducting hazard assessments. That may be a self-survey, just reflecting the challenge of getting out to all 62,000 accounts. So I wouldn't want to say that we're going to be visiting every property that the district services, but we'll be certainly reaching out to our customers in a variety of ways, some of which are, Google Maps and Google Earth, looking at images where we can, communicating with them via postcard and email to try to understand if they have any potential hazards on site. And it's not too different if you think about it from a house that was built in the 1920s, doesn't necessarily have the same structural component as a house that's built today.
Oh, even electrical. I
Right.
mean, yeah,
So
I've seen
it's,
stuff in our house. That's
Code change,
amazing.
code difference, I suppose, between different
Yeah.
properties and different ages, I don't think is unusual,
Right, right. But achieving consistency
is a goal.
would be a great goal. And will AMI facilitate that? Will we?
Yeah, so one of the unique things about AMI is it will allow us to, again, from a risk-based perspective, it will show the backward movement of water. So we can then identify just off a quick database, review which meters have had backflow occurring, and then we can assess sort of the risks associated with that subset of customers.
Right.
So that's sort of the advantage that AMI presents to us.
Right. Great. Because I think, and for anyone who doesn't know, the customers that are required to install these backflow preventers are also required to do an annual maintenance.
Yes.
And they have to contact a plumber that we've identified and then pay for them to come out. I don't think it's very expensive, but it's a laborious procedure that some of them get
and
are
it just-
disgruntled about.
We've certainly heard that. It is, of course, a state regulation, not a Marin water regulation. So we're just sort of the enforcement agency on behalf of the state.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, moving towards consistency would be great.
Excellent. Director Russell.
Essentially, all my neighbors have backflow devices. We don't have a dock. So we live in the arena, but not with a dock. So I hear this a lot too. And it harks to the issue of whether the district should get involved in testing, because it seems like it would be a logical thing if there's more devices coming. I think the other part is that we should be able to use the meter readers to help in this, I would think, because they're going to every site except for the ones with AMI anyway. So might give some thought to that. Other than that, I think you guys did a nice job. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Vice President Smith.
Yeah, thanks for the report. Another good example of how AMI can be helpful for us. I definitely hear a lot of confusion from our customers about the need for supporting their backflow. So maybe some communications ongoing, regular, about what their role is and what our role is and how important it is to do. So I think we do it well, but keep it up. Thank you.
Great. Director Russell stole my idea on the meter readers, but I wonder if there's an opportunity when we actually install AMI, another capture data point for that same process, since we're going to be out on all the properties as well. It'd be interesting to see if we could do it there, especially if we're moving up these timelines. It might be an interesting way to capture it. So that was the only comment. Thank you for the presentation. Appreciate the work going into
I
it.
have one more quick one.
Please.
Paul, your comment caught my attention about reverse flow. I mean, essentially every house with a hot water heater has reverse flow. Does it pick up that level of from the expanding hot water?
I'd have to get back to you on what that sensitivity is.
Yeah, because that's an interesting question. If it all of a sudden starts lighting up all these houses,
Right. But
could be a,
we would see the duration of the flow as well on AMI.
of course.
Great. With that, I'll open up to public comment.
There are none.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 9B, board and committee meeting calendar for 2026. We have a new computer. We have a new computer. Let's celebrate that.
I know. You're right. One thing at a time. We'll get a mouse next week. Good evening, board. Adrienne Mertens, Communications Public Affairs Manager, here tonight to discuss the proposed 2026 board and committee meetings calendar. And the purpose for tonight is to, I will first briefly discuss some of the notable changes from this year's calendar and just review the overall structure of the proposed calendar for this next year. But ultimately, tonight we're asking the board to adopt the 2026 calendar, providing any final direction to staff on changes, which will then be incorporated into the final, if approved this evening. And so the calendar for board and committee meetings is adopted annually. Marin Water's board policy provides the overall guidance for setting the yearly schedule. However, the board does retain discretion to make modifications when adopting the calendar. This includes the meeting date and start times, meeting frequency, and then the structure or formation of our meetings, or in our committees, excuse me. The proposed draft of the 2026 calendar was attached to the staff report. The meeting schedule was prepared by staff in alignment with board policy and past practice, input from the board that we received at the December 1st annual planning retreat. And then the schedule does also take into consideration the director's involvement in regional boards and committees, possible participation at annual water industry conferences, district holidays and religious observances, as well as school holiday breaks. And then anywhere in the draft that's attached to the staff report where there's an exception to the normal schedule, there's an annotation that explains the reason for that change for this next year. And so, there we go. First, starting with just kind of a quick review of our regular board meetings, the structure for those. So board meetings are the primary venue for where our board takes action on district items. They are noticed at least 72 hours prior to the start of the meeting, and they are held the first and third Tuesdays of each month, as outlined in the board handbook. And then they require a quorum, which for us is 3 directors. And then per the current board handbook guidelines, we did look, it actually does specify start times may be at or after 5 p.m. as currently written. And so one item of discussion that did come up at the board planning retreat last Monday and that staff brought forward was considering a new proposed meeting start time to an earlier time. And so current practice, our start times have obviously been 6:30 in most recent years. At the retreat, we did have a discussion about some potential benefits for starting earlier. And at the end of that discussion, the board did ask staff to draft a proposal, our calendar proposal, and include a proposed earlier start time as part of this process tonight. And so we are proposing to start the meeting at regular board meetings at 5 p.m. For the 2026 calendar year. And this was based on some suggested feedback from board members during that discussion, that this proposed start time would align with the end of the typical workday for most people, helping to maintain some convenience still for public participation, whether or not someone is participating in person or remotely. And then with a 5 p.m. start time, the calendar does propose having closed sessions begin at 4 p.m. When closed sessions are applicable on meeting dates. And we did have some logistical reasons for deciding on that 4 p.m. start time. It was raised as an idea from the board. But just when it comes to scheduling outside consultants or others that need to be involved in the meeting, it does get a little tricky to schedule those when we don't have a hard end time for when we would be starting the closed session. And so logistically, 4 p.m. From staff perspective seemed to make sense. Oops, did I go too quick? No, there we go. Okay. And so just to review some of the benefits of the earlier start time and why this was brought forward, it does align more closely with the staff workday and allows for additional staff in the district to attend or present at meetings, which does provide some greater opportunity for organizational exposure and professional development. It also supports meeting effectiveness by improving focus and reduce decision fatigue for later night meetings. And it reduces late work days for both staff and the board, helping to support work-life balance. If we did move to an earlier start time, the board does retain discretion to notice special meetings at later times for topics where increased public participation is expected. I know this was a concern raised during the discussion at the board retreat. And so that option does always exist if there's an item where we do know that there may be more in attendance, and we would want to accommodate that. And then just to provide some background and regional context around what other public agencies are doing, as well as what we've done over the years. Marin Water has started our meetings at various times over the decades and doing some research as early as 5 p.m., 5:30 p.m., our current 6:30 p.m. time, and then even for a while as late as 7:30 p.m. And this just shows that the board has discretion to adjust meeting times as circumstances evolved, as they have over the years. Marin Water does currently meet later than many neighboring agencies, particularly water districts, and several of which hold meetings in the late afternoon or early evening. And then in doing some research on what public agencies around the region are doing, we did find that some agencies, including the city of Sausalito, have recently moved to earlier start times. And Sausalito, in their announcement, cited improved meeting flow, reduced late nights, and enhanced accessibility for their communities as among their reasons for the change. And their meetings were previously at 7 p.m. before changing to 5. And then here's just a snapshot. And the color has been lost on the screen. Those were color coded by sorting out water districts and other utility agencies. And the next columns are sanitary districts, and then cities and towns and counties. And I've bolded the agencies where their meeting times are currently earlier than the board's 6:30 p.m. meeting time. This gives an at-a-glance view of how things stack up across the region. And then I could pause there, or I can just get through. There's a couple more slides, but this really gets into committees next.
Maybe we can keep going.
Okay. So for the 2026 draft calendar, for standing committees, we'll continue with our 3 Finance and Administration Committee. Those are proposed for 4th Thursday of the month. The Planning Committee for the 4th Tuesday of the month, and the Watershed Committee, which will meet quarterly on the 3rd Thursday of the month. And then noted there is consistent with current practice, our Planning and Watershed Committee meetings will continue to be dual noticed in 2026. And just, again, that's noticing both noticing those meetings as both a standing committee meeting and a special meeting of the board of directors to allow all directors to participate in the committee. And that wraps it up. So again, we're hoping for approval of the calendar tonight, but certainly can take any feedback and make any changes that can be reflected in the final adopted calendar.
Great. Adrian, thank you for that, and appreciate all the work that goes into to consider all the different things that are going on throughout the year. So thank you. We'll start with our board comments. Director Russell.
Yeah, I, as I've expressed, I think it's too early. But if we go forward with that earlier start, it seems to me that it's incumbent on us to reevaluate the additional pay that the participants of the board meetings get paid. It seems they should just, if it's going to go with a 5 o'clock, we should just start their day later and let it run through that without that additional pay that comes to the participants. So that's something I think it needs to be kicked around, not necessarily at the board level, but at least at staff level.
Gotcha. Larry, just two clarifying questions. One would, or the first would be, are you talking about staff that stays late to present and the potential overtime costs associated with that?
Yeah, Matt, they're all paid something like 2 weeks of extra pay a year for attending the board meetings. I don't remember the exact numbers, but that's the number that sticks in my head.
So if I can
Please.
jump in, yeah, it's an interesting comment. We have admin leave that we have 40 hours as provided to all management employees. And that's generally to address the issue of you work to get the work done. Often you're working overtime and you don't get overtime. So it's a way to recognize the extra hours that are non-overtime compensated. In addition, and this may be, I'm not sure which, but in addition, there's a program where based on criteria, management can get up to an additional 80 hours of admin leave. The 80 rarely happens, and that's generally based upon looking at the nature of the work. For example, during the drought, when everyone's working 60, 70 hours a week, it was crazy. That number got probably in the average 60, 70 hours versus a typical 40. So it provides some opportunity to recognize when things really get big and crazy, and folks are just, working well above 40 hours. I do think, Director Russell, that part of the narrative is of many things it drives management to work beyond 40 hours. One of them is board meetings, but it's not, the reason, my understanding, for that, administrative leave. I don't know, when I think about my personal schedule, yeah, board meetings add to it, but really it's just the off-hour demands that come or the weekend work because you have a high, that kind of natural just workload that is inherently cyclical in a place like this, particularly for management. So interesting question. We can think about that. I think the way you presented it, it was kind of an aside from the decision on doing this. So what we can,
Does the start time impact the administrative hours?
No, I
Guess I'm
think
confused.
Larry's point was if the administrative leave was directly and solely linked to attending late board meetings, if the board meeting isn't so late, should you still receive that admin leave? But I've always viewed it and I've always considered it as a much broader, bigger issue than just attending board meetings, even though that has some impact.
Yeah, I mean, especially even with the recent RTMP community workshops, we saw our watershed director out there all day on a Sunday. I'm assuming that is what
Right.
you're talking about as well.
Perfect example.
Yep.
He was not compensated for 10 hours on Sunday, right?
Right. No, point taken, but I think Director Russell, your point taken too. So if there's an opportunity, we can look at something like that. I think it's a good managerial position. And then the second one, Larry, is there a time that you'd like to see considered as opposed to 5?
Well, the real issue, Matt, is the 4.
Yeah.
You know, I still run 2 companies, and our people are working at that time. I've always viewed the board meetings, other than the committee meetings, to be something that's after work, not in the middle of work. As I expressed at the retreat, I can assure you that I will be called out of many of those meetings for telephone calls that are still continuing at that time. So, you know, I would consider it disruptive. 4 o'clock in particular, I mean, you know, I'm personally still going strong at 4 o'clock. You know, I'll adjust. It's not a make or break kind of thing. Similarly with my comments about that additional time, the pay time, um, that was always presented to me as for functioning for the board meetings. That's why I brought it up. That's how it was always expressed to me. That's the first I've heard Ben's assessment of that. So, you know, but the earlier it comes up, like I say, there can be an adjustment in time. They can start a little later. And so there's obviously benefits to that for all of them. I don't know so much for us, but for all of them. So I'm not, you know, jumping up and down about it, but it is a concern.
Okay.
The one
Thank you.
thing for closed sessions too, there is always the option if a 4 p.m. time didn't work, that could be scheduled as a special meeting that works for the board's schedule.
Yeah, and if I may just add, I think having a set start time for the closed session, which would be facilitated by doing it ahead of the regular meeting time, because we don't know exactly how long our meetings are going to run, would be more important when we're having an outside consultant or outside legal counsel attending, so that we can give them a definitive time for when we need them here, as opposed to somewhere around, and having them wait, or even having the board wait for a specific start time if we're waiting on them. So I think there's flexibility there, because we don't have that in every closed session situation. So I think we could do some after the meeting.
Yeah, I just- you have to be careful though, not to prioritize outside consultants that we're paying to make sure that they're, I
Right.
mean,
No, that was what I was going to say. They are working for us at the end of the day.
Sure.
And if it's after the meeting and we give them a range, you know, it can work. I'd say from staff, the earlier board meeting time, you know, in your hearing, is very interesting to staff. And I think really driven, you know, the way I think about it, right, as we've talked to the board, commutes are getting longer and tougher for staff, right? Just affordability, staff is moving further and further out. And, you know, at nighttime, it just does get, you know, a bit much, but, you know, that's a job and it's fine. But, you know, if the board is open, I would say, you know, closed sessions is a minor issue. And if we have a board member concerned about it, we could just say, we'll hold those after the meeting or separate, or ensure that it works for all the board for a given closed session. But we could work with that, you know, and well, I'll stop.
no, I think it's good additional information. And the other part too is that there's some flexibility in determining agenda items. So if there's going to be a closed session, we could reduce the agenda items to make sure we're not going too late. There's some flexibility in there. Okay, great.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Do we know that staff for sure, like, has anyone discussed this with the staff? Do we know for sure they're interested and that more staff would come if we do it earlier?
You know, I was thinking that tonight, that would we have some staff here? I don't know. I think certainly more likely than not, 5 o'clock is still, you know, generally your day's over. So you want to sit, to a board meeting or get home. So yes, it's a fair question, and I don't know. I would say though, I would expect if, there's a capital project that you're part of, but you aren't giving it. Yeah, you'll probably, decide to attend the meeting and hear the comments and understand them a bit. So I think it'll depend, but
And I
yeah,
think
I don't want to
there-
suggest it'll be overwhelming and all these
Right.
interested staff because people do want to get home.
Yeah. On the other hand, by 6:30, traffic has died down, and at 5, it might be a good way to kill time. So,
Right.
Never thought we'd be used as a time killer.
well, equal opportunity.
Larry, any other
advantages.
further comments before I move on to the next director? Was that your last?
Sorry, Larry.
Yeah, I'm cool.
Okay, great. Director Kush.
Not much more to add. Kind of just reiterating what we did cover in the board retreat. Balancing public access to these meetings with staff. I don't know what the right word is. Comfort with the schedule or
Call it impact.
impact on with staff impacts of the schedule is obviously what we're trying to achieve here with the change. Maybe we could if we do move in this direction to the earlier start time, also keep track of any inputs we're getting, particularly from the public regarding how well it's working for them, and then use that at some point to decide if we want to stick with it or not. But otherwise, I think it's good to try it.
Great. Okay. Director Mayer.
I'm good with it.
Vice President Smith.
Yeah, thank you for giving us the quick look at the offsite. So that was great, and feedback. I like Director Amer's suggestion to start at 5 instead of 4, and potentially have the closed sessions at a different time. I know we have a bunch of closed sessions coming up in next year, so I think if it's better for Director Russell to have them be after, we should probably do them after. And especially because I know a couple of them I think might be long, so I don't want to start at 3 or 3:30. So we have the ability to start them earlier if we vote and decide, and we can work with you on that and make a suggestion. So my recommendation would be to have that be a change. I think that the finance committee meetings as a finance committee have worked. I want to make sure that we at least have that discussion, because that is another point that we're in essence approving tonight, I think. So rather than have it be full board meetings, do the same method that we have been doing that. This would be a time, I think, to at least give some input and comments on that. Regarding the specific calendar, I did give some feedback that December not having a finance committee meeting is a 2-month period of not having a finance committee meeting, and I feel like that's long. I know that's our tradition is not to have one in December, but if we are deep in the rate setting process discussion, we may want to have one then, and I know we can create one if we want, and so we can look at how it's going at that time, or we can put it on the calendar now and take it off if we don't need it. So I think the recommendation from staff is to not have it on there, but I want to at least have a tickler that might be something we consider. I think the idea also of having only one board meeting in December is interesting, instead of 2, which is I think what we traditionally have had. But maybe we have our retreat in December instead of a board meeting, and maybe that's one way to have the conversations, the important conversations continuing. So otherwise, I'm good to go.
Great. Thank you for that. I do want to focus on December, because the elimination of a meeting, and we've moved. This year was a kind of a pilot with the August cancellation.
Yeah.
It sounded like it went fairly well, and so it's nice to have that in advance now, so folks can make their plans for the summer. And I appreciate that window, but all the way to December now, doing it again, eliminating it again. and also too trying to get in our retreat component, because I think we have to deal with election, off election year, which was probably part of the discussion already. So if you have any additional information,
Yeah,
that'd be appreciated.
and we would be preparing for the retreat in December, but we likely wouldn't have the retreat in 2026 or until January 2027 because we may have
New
some
folks.
board shuffling.
Right. That's, I think it'd be good to, we're not playing. So what year are we in? When should we have the retreat? We're having a new general manager, new board. I think we have an opportunity to solidify it, which makes sense. I mean, even if we, if we can do that somehow. I do like the idea and entertaining of it. If it is December, I'm not sure when the actual swearing in would happen and all of those things, but if we did a board retreat as part of that and then get it set, just one meeting for the year, that could potentially work too. But part of me gets a little bit concerned because we're still going to be charging really hard on a lot of big projects. There's going to be a lot of things that need to be approved by the board consistently. And so if we're taking out meetings, is that going to mess up the workflow at all?
I do just chime in to remind the board that we can schedule a special meeting on any particular topic that comes up and is pressing and there's a need. It is obviously logistically more difficult to get everybody's calendar in alignment, but that's a 24-hour agendized notice that's posted. It's on a specific topic. So if there are pressing matters that come up, that is always available.
Yeah, and I think the inverse is true too. We can always cancel a meeting at any point. But there is value, and I think there's inherent value of letting everybody know this year what the next year is going to look like so that people can make plans and plan accordingly. So I think I'd like to see us figure out December and then the board retreat component tonight before we can, or if we can do it. And looking, I think maybe Ben, if you can shed some light on what the actual annual retreat, when you think would be a good idea to do, that'd be helpful if you have any. Would it be good to do it December, January, somewhere in there late? And I'm asking him on the spot here. So
No, I think, with what's anticipated next year, uniquely, I think January may be for next year, the time for the retreat.
Okay.
Instead of what we did this year.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, I just want to just give a heads up that starting January 20th, I'm going to be kind of stepping back from my law practice and transitioning into full-time mediation with signature resolution. And what it means is, so they'll book my mediations. I give them my calendar and they book my mediations. When I get booked for a mediation, I'm really booked all day. Like probably for at least 10 hours. Like they pay me a lot of money and I have to really be present. It would be good to know, but when I'm not working, I'm totally free. So it would be good to know just like if there's maybe one day a week, I should always keep free. Like on Tuesdays, I could just say, okay, I'll start at 7 in the morning, for example, and I'll be done by 5. But it'd be good to know if there's like one day a week, I should always keep free for like closed sessions, ad hoc closed sessions, or, just things like that.
Well, what we could think about is, in line with that, try and keep Tuesdays.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were going to do ad hocs, we could
Mm-hmm.
try and target, the off Tuesdays.
Mm-hmm.
If that would that
Sure.
would be the day.
And I figured I would tell them like on Tuesdays and Thursdays, book me late and then I'll go late. So we could also like do things early. I just feel bad because I know other people have tight schedules too. So I was just thinking maybe there'd be one day a week I could just keep open so I can be super flexible.
I don't have any other comments on the schedule beyond what we've discussed. I did want to come back to Jed's point on the finance or comment on the finance committee structure. It works well for me. However, at the last finance committee, there was a very interesting discussion on the impact of the rates on water bills last year, following on the presentation that Brett had given the year before. And I think you had decided during the meeting to present that information again
That's
during
right,
the retreat,
yeah.
and it fell through. So perhaps when we are starting to dig into the new rate cycle process, we could come back to that. I think it would be really good for everybody to hear that.
Great.
Director Russell, any further comments?
You're
Sorry,
on mute.
having a little problem with Zoom. I know I'm on mute. I'm trying to get off of mute. No, I'm cool at the moment.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I think I've got consensus that the retreat would be in January of 27 as the next process going, and we can wait till the new president is sworn in at that point for that piece. And so the last one would be December. Are we good with one meeting in December?
I'm fine with it. If we need to add one, we can.
Okay.
Yep.
Understood. Okay.
Thanks.
Any follow-up? We're okay. Great. With that, we'll open it up to public comment.
Phil Sauter.
Yeah, and thank you, Director Cush, for your concern about public participation. I think that'll be an unknown, and I think there's some unknowns as to how even the directors and staff will fit in. So I'd like to recommend that if you do approve this tonight, that you build in a 3-month checkup where you agendize and see how it's going.
Great. Thank you.
There are no further speakers.
Clarification point. Is there, once the board calendar set for the year, is there ability to change it with one swoop for the rest of the year if we did run into problems in the first few months?
There is, I think, oh, sorry. There is, it's within the discretion of the board, but certainly it's having the certainty for folks well into that coming year that prompts us to do this planning. So if there were changes, the board would obviously want to be considerate of that fact, but there's no reason why it can't be changed.
Right. Yeah, I think for me, I'd like to avoid the pendulum swinging all the time. So, okay, great. With that, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the board calendar for 2026.
So moved.
With the modification that the closed sessions would start after.
I
Yeah.
apologize. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
for the
Only change.
clarification.
All right, thanks. Second.
Great. We have a first and a second. Terry, roll call, please.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Vice President Smith,
Aye.
Director Cush,
Aye.
Director Mayer,
Aye.
and President Sampson.
Yes, item passes. Moving on to item number 10, future board and committee meetings.
So I'm just going to bring up next week, there are 2 meetings, our second board meeting of the month and our watershed committee meeting. Also, I believe the North Bay Water Reuse Authority has a meeting on Monday. So I just found that out today. So yeah, and that's it.
And this Thursday.
I'm sorry.
We start this Thursday? Is planning, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, great.
Mhm.
Excellent. And with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn.